This is the paper label on my Flex beer bottle. The picnic beer. It's a larger bottle. They definitely brag cave aged and in wooden vats in sandstone rock. So they not only aged the beer in wooden vats, but they fermented the beer in wooden vats. That most likely would mean it was a lager beer. They like cooler temperatures. 50 degrees Fahrenheit would be about the temperature they prefer, somewhere in there for a lager beer, and that's what those caves are year round, something close to that, I'm sure. And I didn't realize this was a non-pasteurized beer. It says keep cold at all times. So I have no idea what this beer tasted like, but it seemed to be a popular beer in southwestern Minnesota, southern Minnesota. So we'll go ahead and delve into the history of these caves here, because they want to brag about their cave age and their wooden vats and sand rock. If you'll look, you'll see little guys there. There's the vats. There's a guy with a cart, another guy with a cart, another guy. So they fermented in vats, wooden vats, and they aged it in wooden vats, I believe. And it was unpasteurized.
Here we are at the original Fleckenstein cave in Faribault, and this is where in 1856 the two Fleckenstein brothers established their brewery. They were from Bavaria, and the idea was that they would lager the beer in here. In other words, the process by which they would ferment it by just storing it in barrels in here, and perhaps even they collected ice on the Straight River in winter and then packed it in here to try to keep the beer cool year round. It's uncertain.
Okay, here comes Greg down the secret passageway. Probably burn his eyes out with my super duper flashlights here. So right off to the right is some footholds.
Well, here we are at the second Fleckenstein cave. The first one was more in the center of town, the two brothers, and then they had a nasty parting, and Ernst Fleckenstein came down here to build his brewery, and this became in time the Fleckenstein Brewery. So this is in 1872 that this was carved out. And the first one was carved out in 1856. That is a very significant early date, because even in St. Paul, Minnesota, which is famous for its immigrant-built breweries, 1855 is about as far back as you go there. So Faribault was actually really early. And as you can see, it's carved out of the St. Peter sandstone, chiseled out very nicely. And then in this long north-south passage, and it's kind of neatly oriented of the compass directions. And so now we'll go off into the Tun Room. That's Tun, T-U-N, where they had the big vats. Okay, well, so this cave, the second Fleckenstein cave, closed in 1964. And again, that is a significant date, because they were said to have had, that was one of their selling points, the Flex beer, is that it was cave aged. If you go up to the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, they had stopped most cave aged brewing back about the year 1900. So this cave survived with that process for a whole other generation, at least. And that really has an impact here, because we can actually see better remnants up here a more complete picture of what the brewery was doing and in the Twin Cities. We got these pipes coming out. We have here these depressions in the wall, these little, where vats had been. And you just don't get this kind of thing in the Twin Cities because, like I said, the caves went out of stop lot using caves about 1900, and so any kind of remnant like this would have long since been torn out of the cave. Now you ask why they don't age beer in caves anymore, just generally, and it has to do with the fact that these caves were originally dug by these Bavarian immigrants underground because it was sort of like a free source of refrigeration. Okay, but once cheap electricity became available about the year 1900, and the so-called Lindy refrigeration machine, of which you can see a working example at the Shell Brewery in New Ulm, you didn't need to come underground anymore. Another thing was this was such a hassle. And look how dirty these caves are. I mean, seriously, when you go to a microbrewery nowadays, you go for a tour, everything's stainless steel, people are in white lab coats, and look at all the dirt we have on the walls. It's just filthy. This played a role in contaminating the beer. And you get all kinds of byproduct fermentations or bi-fermentations that you don't really want. So as soon as they could get out of the caves, they did. And this is like the latest one in Minnesota, example Minnesota I'm aware of, where you actually get to see at least some of the equipment that was present when they shut down. Okay, so we're just kind of doing the highlights of this cave very briefly, but here is what I call the mushroom room. Actually, it's kind of silly because this cave, so far as I'm aware, was not used for mushroom growing. In the Twin Cities, in St. Paul especially, you see a lot of caves that started out as mushroom caves and then they went to lagering, or sometimes vice versa. But even though we have mushrooms painted on the wall here, spray painted here, it's so ironic because the mushrooms that are spray painted in mushroom caves, they're psychedelic mushrooms or some other. This is an amanita, obviously, with that polka dot pattern here. This is not the commercial domesticated mushroom, Agaricus bisporus. It's a species of amanita, some kind of psychedelic thing, and so it's a very different sort of mushroom we're talking about there. Yes, as I said, this cave was carved in the St. Peter sandstone. And, sometimes you can see interesting stratigraphic markers and other things in here. Here we see what is interpreted by some researchers as paleo water tables. So probably the iron was picked up in the glacial drift and perhaps in the Platteville limestone above, carried down by seepage, and then, it's kind of at these various locations for a while. And then we look up above, we see we have this brick vaulted ceiling. This is the rest of the cave, it's just bare sandstone ceiling. And what I'm thinking here is that we're getting very close to the edge of the cliff. Okay, and they had to reinforce the ceiling here. Maybe we were getting a lot of spalling from, just cascading onto their heads. So they decided that they're going to add this extra reinforcement to it. Yeah, well, this is like the rarest natural cave formation that I see in the Flex Cave. And these look like random bumps. But actually what these are a sign that there's some kind of wetness here. These are like the beginnings of stalactites. These are like, so in distinction from the stalactites in an ordinary cave, which are made out of calcium carbonate, these are sandstone stalactites. How weird is that? So you can see they're just barely kind of getting going here. You know, and they're obviously they're solid inside there, but it's just, you know, rather peculiar to find this kind of cave formation.
Catch up with my partner here.
Well, another thing we see here, another water feature, so to speak, they got all these roots dangling down, and they are actually wet. So what's happening, we have a joint in the St. Peter sandstone, this linear feature, it's going straight across the ceiling here, and then there's like a little space in there, and these rootlets in search of water obviously are, you know, following that down. And this is a way that, you know, these caves are this sandstone weathers. That's, you know, and we're getting fairly close to the entrance here. We know that this is, you know, the surface of the land is not all that far above us. They're getting to the edge of the cliff. Well, here we are, again, at some kind of entrance to some kind of passage in here. There's plenty of beer cans in here, but ironically, you can't find Flex beer cans. Those are collectibles, and I've never seen one in here. You see them up at the Rice County Museum, but that's like the one kind of beer can you won't find in here. As I look down this passage, it's kind of like a sump or something. It's like the lowest spot in the cave, and it's kind of wet down there. And actually this is some of the detritus that you find in modern caves. We actually have a discarded flat panel television down there. So I don't know if they were using it in the cave and you know, trying to get reception down here, but that's kind of an interesting piece of detritus. Well, this is one of the exits to the Flex Cave, and we're looking at it from the inside. Obviously, somebody's tried to barricade it from the inside. And since we were here last, I see that somebody's been tampering with it. I think this cave gets regular visitation, actually. But this is one of several exits.
Hey, you got a bunch of spiders on you, dude. Get them off. Get them. Yikes, they're huge.
Friends.
They're friends. Ah.
It's Halloween time anyway.
Oh, there's one up on your head too, dude.
Oh, man.
Oh,
Okay.
no.
Oh, yeah.
Oh. Uh-oh.
It's definitely the largest.
All right. Enough of that.
Well, we've gone pretty much full circle in this cave, just looking at some of the highlights, lots of other little interesting features. Personally, I thought that, you know, as far as the political affiliations of troglodytes, I had to wonder, but I guess it says Bernie 2020 there. I guess that kind of lets us know who the troglodytes are voting for in the election. So it's an interesting and touching monument. But just there's some other little exits here, and we're pretty much back where we started. I'm just getting.
So there's Greg doing a little survey work.
Yeah, Dave doesn't even have a map of this place, so I would work on that.
By the way, I do have a compass. I do have a compass.
Yes, this time I have my compass here.
Okay. Oh, you do have a compass. All right.
Yeah, it's pretty much going in a cardinal direction. It's north, south, and east, west
Okay.
type passages.
Okay.
I'll just